You're listening to No Plot, Only Lore, a podcast about games and the tables we play them at. Your DMs tonight and every night are Josh and Kris. You can find us on all podcast platforms or check us out at noplotonlylore.com. If you like what you hear today, please rate and review the show and share it with everyone you've ever met.
Welcome back to No Plot, Only Lore, the coolest D&D podcast.
I would say we're the D&D podcast that rules.
Man, your pun was so much better than mine.
That's me. I think it's because I have double the dad genes. 2 kids means twice as much puns.
Is that how that works? Is that like multi-classing into the same class that you already had?
Yeah. You, like, what happens is you sort of create this feedback loop, and every kid you have just like increases the density of puns in your bloodstream.
Okay, so what happens if you now become a stepdad?
Oh, stepdads get the same result, but it's only half as efficient.
Okay, but you've already got like the double down on the parenting
Yeah,
class.
I'm saying I don't get double down now. Like, if I added an additional step kid, it'll be like a 50% boost.
Okay, so you're going to have to like adopt some more to like push those numbers?
Adoption's even worse, yeah.
Fantastic. Anyway, rule of cool. You and I have a fundamental disagreement about the rule of cool and its role in role-playing games.
Why don't you explain your position first?
All right, my position comes from having spent a very long time playing various systems and slowly coming to the realization that all of them are pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. With the only real differences being the people that you're playing them with. Okay. So, like, yes, you're going to be focusing on different things based on the rule set, but the most important thing in the role-playing games that I've played are the interactions that you're having and the cool moments that you're able to take away from those. Uh-huh. And so if I have a moment that counteracts the rules, if I have a thing that somebody wants to do that is not 100% within the rule set, I am happy to let them try it. I'm happy to let them do it if it's going to improve the stories that we tell about this thing later.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So my assertion is that the rule of cool is first of all, it's a crutch for people who don't learn the actual mechanical rules of the game to a degree that they can problem solve. They are just sort of winging it off their ass and hoping you'll let them get away with bullshit. The second problem I have is that it becomes a logistical nightmare for the DM to track in their head what they've let people get away with in the past, because the kind of people who try to pull rule of cool bullshit almost invariably turn around and say, well, you let me do it before, I should get to do it now, whenever they want to abuse some goofball thing that they got away with. And finally, I find that the rule of cool is like, it throws you off the table in a way that really like detracts from everyone else's experience. If you got one person out there in particular who tends to like lean on that rule of cool and say, well, I don't really know what my character can or can't do, so I'm just going to like come up with random nonsensical shit, then, you know, everyone else at the table is kind of just sitting there suffering for the like increased spotlight on that person who doesn't know how to I guess I don't want to use the word properly, but properly interact with the table. And I understand that like this can all come back to like, well, just don't let them do the thing, but like, let's be honest, that's every conversation we have can just end with like, okay, just say no as the DM. But like, I don't think that's healthy to have to rely on just saying no all the time.
Well, we both come from improv backgrounds, yeah. So like yes-anding is in our fucking blood, whether we want it to be or not.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we're taking that from two very different perspectives. Because, like, when I'm considering what should be included in Rule of Cool, right? Like if I'm trying to make an adjudication based on Rule of Cool, it has to be something that's actually cool, and like that there's an understanding underlying that this is like a one-time thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if maybe like we don't preface enough when these things are like one time, or obviously I'm just letting you get away with this thing one time, or like if you can come up with a really good reason that you're able to do it again, then maybe we could talk about it, but it's got to be a really good reason, right? Like every time Rule of Cool is, I don't want to say invoked, because nobody at my tables has ever been like, excuse me, DM, Rule of Cool, I should be able to stab 37 guys at once. But like anytime somebody's tried to do a thing where I've considered making an allowance because of Rule of Cool, it's always been a negotiation.
Right. And what I've run into more frequently is people who everyone is trying to work to solve a problem, and they come up with the most like harebrained solution to it out of like desperation because they can't actually figure out a logical, like, especially when I like put like IRL like time constraints on a problem, then they'll just be like, if it's like, okay, here's a locked door you can't get in, he's like, okay, well, what if I like took my spear and wedged it in the side, did a kickflip and bounced off of that because of parkour, and then I'm just like, no, like, figure it out. You can't Rule of Cool your way through every problem because, you know, you just had too much like caffeine before you showed up.
As soon as I hear that, my brain goes to Rule of Funny, which is fucking roll it.
Yeah.
The DC is 100.
Yeah. I will let you fail your stupid idea, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to try to do this thing. The DC is infinity.
Right.
There is absolutely no way that you can do this thing. I don't usually run with a natural 20 is an automatic success on skills.
We don't either.
Or like so even if you roll a natural 20, your +6 ain't going to get you there, bruh.
Yeah. And see, I think the problem is that like the well has already been poisoned by the idea of a Rule of Cool, and that's what frustrates me so much about it. Is that like it's really hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube, you know. So now people are, I feel like, expecting to be able to like just give it a go, give it a reach with the Rule of Cool, because it has the word rule in it, and that's the biggest like flaw, is that someone attached the word rule to something that is like inherently lawless.
Again, I wouldn't necessarily call it lawless. I think like anytime we're looking at doing stuff like this, it has to be negotiated with your table, and you have to be in a place where you're able to make those negotiations in good faith.
Right.
And like your initial descriptions of like problems that you've had with Rule of Cool suggest that you have at least one player who is not negotiating in good faith, right? Like they're trying to utilize the idea of Rule of Cool to metagame, essentially, and circumvent the challenges that you've put in place because they came up with a really cool idea in their head for how they should be able to do that. Right.
And I agree, but also like that's the fault of the devs for like putting the idea out there. Like Rule of Cool should not have been introduced to the lexicon.
It wasn't the devs who introduced Rule of Cool to the lexicon, though. That was part of the wider community for decades before we had it put into one of the D&D core books.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you should never canonize, don't canonize community stupidity.
Okay. So, the benefits, though.
Okay. The benefits
like,
are you can be lazy in your rule writing and not think of like edge cases that you might need to keep a little note on, and then just like hand wave that away with, well, Rule of Cool.
Well, no, I think that like part of it is that when you have the understanding that you can try anything and potentially be rewarded for coming up with a really good idea, means that players are taking bigger swings. And that isn't always necessarily a great thing if your game is all big swings all the time.
Right.
But in a lot of cases, for me at least, when my players are rewarded for trying to do something that's just a little bit crazy, and they actually succeed at it, they get a huge rush, and then I see around my table more people trying stuff in that vein. Right? And it isn't always going to be something that I'm going to make an exception for. But at least they're trying to come up with bigger things that they can try on any of these given challenges. Right? So I think that it really like pulls in creativity when you start to reward that creativity. The whole thing with the fucking like stuff my spear into the cracks of the door and try and parkour off of it is not something that I would even consider rule of cool. To me, that's just like an opportunity to watch one of those skateboarding fails videos where a guy does a stupid stunt off of his spear.
Right. This is just an episode of Baldur's Gate ridiculousness or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, just like the YouTube poops version of Baldur's Gate. Fuck, my kid has discovered those recently.
Oh, no.
It's not like brand name YouTube poops, but it's very much like in that vein.
Yeah.
And just like Mario characters weirdly distorted and doing like random skits and reactions and things that are like super cut together.
Vile.
It is painful to listen to. I thought Preston Place was fucking annoying, but god damn.
Oh. No, okay, we're not going to go down the YouTube rabbit hole of terrible content creators aimed at 10-year-olds, but my I guess counterpoint to this idea of like, you know, enhancing creativity is that people are stupid, and my evidence for that is so I don't know. Have you picked up the 2024 Player's Handbook yet?
I haven't bought it.
Okay,
I've read through it, but I haven't bought it.
You've read through it? Okay. So you're familiar with the whole new section about, like, tools and artisans' tools?
I skimmed it.
Uh-huh. So, to recap, the OG 5th edition tools section was a single page with a, like, bullet point list of what types of tools are available, a vague explanation of, like, maybe 5 general categories, and a blurb that said, I don't know, you can kind of do all sorts of things. Maybe your DM can make something up for a check. And they had to expand that into 3 pages of listing every single artisan's tool and what thing you could do with it and what the actual DC of that would be. Because I think people saw a really vague blurb about, like, your DM could make something up and started trying to abuse shit.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some people do some fucked up things with Tinker's tools.
Yeah. And now they're like, listen, this is what a Tinker's tool can actually do. Here's a reasonable usage of it, you know.
A lot of trap crafting.
Right.
It's a hard thing to say. Where building traps would not necessarily be the most appropriate use for those tools.
Yep. People trying to somehow excuse their masonry tools as, like, a way to build a great deadfall trap in the middle of the woods.
Just Ewok that shit up.
Yeah, exactly.
Would that fall under rule of cool, though? Like,
No,
to me, that just sounds like people trying to abuse rules to do shit that they shouldn't be able to do, as opposed to, like, making an exception for a very cool moment.
I think it's an example of, you know, how people will use rules vagaries to try to, you know, get an edge. You know, it's the classic, like, angle shooting idea. So yeah,
Okay. What about the benefits to, like, storytelling and, like, momentum, the narrative momentum, like being able to throw down on a cool moment and not necessarily have to worry about the rules because the moment itself was cool?
I think and again, like, this is all prefaced, but like, you can always say no. But I think that rule of cool users tend to be a little like attention selfish, you know? If there's a thing happening, first of all, like, I really do buy into the idea that like most of D&D is more mundane than you think. And not every fight with an animal is like a super cool boss moment. But I think that, like, when you're talking about people using rule of cool, like, let's say when you're taking on your BBEG or whatever it is, like, yeah, they just want more spotlight time, and they want to be the main character in a way that distracts from the contributions of the rest of the party.
See, I don't want to argue your points for you, but the first thing that popped into my head when you said that was Allie Beardsley's entire career.
And I get that. And I also, like, you know, I don't find them particularly interesting when compared to, like, the other typical cast members. They don't know what they're doing, and then they just kind of wing it and think, well, wouldn't this be funny? And I don't, that gets old very fast.
Have you watched the Starstruck Odyssey?
Chunks of it.
Okay, because I feel like that's one where Beardsley really shines as, like, the mastery of the game that they have attained has shifted, right? Like, they very much play the straight man in that one.
Okay.
Where, like, they're the ones who are corralling people and being serious and trying to get shit done. And it's a very different take on it, and at the same time, people are still doing this, like, rule of cool nonsense where they're trying to, like, one-up Brennan, and a couple of really solid moments come out of that. And, like, maybe that's the thing for me, is that, like, rule of cool offers opportunities for players who aren't necessarily as clever as people who would be on Dimension 20 to kind of, like, get one over on the DM, I guess. Or, like, just come up with, like, an idea that's so fucking cool that they have no choice but to roll with it.
Okay, but, like, just that idea, like, that you have to get one over on your DM, like, you've now framed the relationship of the entire table in the wrong way. Like, we're both working towards the same objective. I'm not just
trying to kill everybody.
I'm controlling the enemies, but I'm not your enemy. You know, I am essentially just, like, the AI that runs the monsters, and then the other half of me is, like, the cool friend that's like, let's make some neat memories and interesting moments, and maybe expressively I have, like, a cool story I think I would like to explore, but on the understanding that, like, I only get to set the framework of the story and everyone else is going to color in the lines or whatever. And that's the thing, as soon as someone starts coloring outside the lines, it's like, well, you've wrecked the rest of the story.
But, like, my antagonism, though, my inherent throwing down on... I play that shit up.
Yeah.
But, like, part of me playing that up is that it does engender, like, a team cohesion of... And, like, maybe that's something that's, I guess, more unique to my tables, is that, like, me constantly poking and be like, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill all of you. It's going to be a TPK. When they do have an opportunity to, like, do something that's really cool and, like, quote unquote ruins my plans, I'm still allowing it.
Right.
But, like, it goes counter to the way that I was expecting that thing to go, because I choose to yes and whatever this cool fucking thing is.
Right.
Then they all get that moment of, like, fuck yeah, we did it. We put it to him, and we won where we shouldn't have.
Right. And see,
so
I try to create similar, I guess, feelings and moments, but it's not about me as the antagonist. It's the world. The world is unforgiving and mean, and I'm here to, as part of the group, trying to tame that, you know? So
I guess
I don't want
right,
you to have defeated me. I'm not the end boss.
So how would you make Rule of Cool work for you? Like, what changes would need to be made to make Rule of Cool work at your tables, do you think?
So I already find ways to not negate the Rule of Cool, but like turn it on itself, or just like, yeah. So when someone asks me to do something insane, my first instinct is, well, what are they really trying to do? Right? And try to talk that through with them. Like, it's, it sounds like what you want to do is X, Y, Z. Like, you're trying to figure out a way to get through this door when none of you have Arcana or lockpicking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just try to like talk through the situation with them to get to like, okay, where can we insert actual mechanics to try to make this thing work? I mean,
can I use Tinker's tools to take the hinges off the door?
Maybe, but the hinges are on the inside. So,
but what if I roll good enough?
Then you might as well have saved that roll for trying to punch down the door. Right?
But we want to do it silently so the alarm doesn't go off.
Yeah, I know. There's always like whatever. But like I also try to like I love a failure. I love a failure so much. Yeah, try to
That was our first episode.
Yeah, try to break down a door. It didn't work and you raise the alarm. Now we deal with that, right? That's more interesting to me than like always succeeding and finding dumb ways to always succeed. Like eventually, like the challenge disappears entirely if you can always sort of Rule of Cool your way out of it.
I guess for me, like when somebody's trying to do something that is outside the normal rules, it's always really important to me to tie that to logical consequences.
Right.
Like, okay, you stuff your spear into the crack in the door, and let us assume that I think you doing parkour off of this spear is cool enough to warrant some kind of possibility that this will actually do the thing you want.
Right.
I don't, because it's a bad idea.
Right.
But, like, assuming that I think parkour is the coolest fucking thing, you're going to give this a shot. If the door opens, there's a consequence to that.
Right.
You are going to fall down. You are going to take damage. There's going to be loud noise.
Right.
Right. Like, all of those things are still true.
Right.
But you get that moment of jumping off of your spear and doing like a sick 180 Tony Hawk style off of it.
Yeah.
And everybody around the table is like, fuck yeah, we got around that challenge or whatever.
Yeah.
But it has to tie to consequences, right? Like there's never a time where you do Rule of Cool and then just everything works scot-free.
Right.
Right. Which I think is part of the reason that like some of the choices that Brennan Lee Mulligan makes around his table, I understand are for like narrative purposes, but I have disagreed with them because they do appear to be without essential consequence.
Yeah.
Especially around some of Beardley's biggest rules.
Yeah.
Like no spoilers for like any of the Fantasy High seasons, but there's a role in particular at the end of the third season of that where it essentially resolves a lot of things that it shouldn't have resolved.
Right.
And that just had me back up a bit and be like, okay, so where's the bad? Because there's a lot of potential bad there.
Right. Essentially, they just boiled down the roll to like, okay, Allie, roll to win the game.
Yeah, and like roll an @20 because that's the thing you're known for.
Yeah.
And like as soon as you roll an @20, then we'll move on.
Yeah.
But it does have to be like a big deal, and it has to like the consequences have to be a big deal.
Yeah.
To match the amount of cool that happened. And also like partial success, I think, is something that we don't necessarily focus on as much as we could for Rule of Cool. Like the idea is always that I'm going to do this cool thing and look great doing it. But maybe you jump off of your spear and it doesn't actually open the door completely, but it breaks a chunk off of the door and now you can see through it.
Right. Or the door opened, but
Right.
you broke the tip of your spear off, so...
Yeah. And then, like, use it as a spotlight tool.
Yeah.
As well. Right? Like, it isn't something that I would... I guess maybe one of the choices that I would make around my table that would potentially be polarizing is I would reserve rule of cool for quieter players.
Right.
Right? Like, they don't get as many opportunities to contribute because they are quieter. They're not constantly shouting ideas out and like trying to do the biggest, coolest things. And so when they do try to do a thing, if that thing is at all creative, like grab a +2 on the die, and if you succeed, then it's going to be fucking great.
Right. Okay, but then how... So, like, obviously you're all sitting at the same table. The power gamer's going to see that happen. How do you keep them from being like, well, he got to do a cool thing, she got to do a cool thing, I'm going to try to do a cool thing, like, all the time? Because they're going to see, oh, they got a slice advantage. Like,
it's always a negotiation.
well, yeah.
Right? Like, if you throw 33 cool ideas at me, I'm not giving you a +2 on the die for every single one of them.
Yeah, but, like, that's what irritates me, is, like, they're going to try for it every time. They're going to see it worked one time, and they're going to ask every time.
I don't have that experience, I guess.
Okay, all right.
Like, maybe it's just the people that I'm playing with, but, like, even the power gamers, like, once they get that +2 and they get that moment of cool, and they try to do another thing and, like, eke that advantage out of it, if I just explain, like, no, that was a one-time thing, then they're cool with it, right? Like, they just roll their dice and move on.
Maybe you just play with a lot less stubborn people than I do.
I think that is generally true. Yeah. I mean, I don't play with you at my table.
No, it's true. Well, you did one time.
I did, yes.
Yeah, one super memorable time. I guess we'll see what happens, because I'm about to... we're just wrapping up the Rime of the Frost Maiden, and we're going to take like a very short break, and maybe do some group restructuring, and then I'm going to run a Gamma World campaign. I'm not sure if it's going to be like a long thing or we're just going to do like a short arc as a refresher, but we just want to mix things up. So I guess I'll see what happens when I am running people through a system they're unfamiliar with, and in a setting they're unfamiliar with. How much rule of cool they try to do when they don't have any idea what's going on.
Yeah, and I think you'll probably end up seeing like less attempts at the power gaming side of things, mostly because they don't have the familiarity with the rules to be able to try and bend them all the time.
Sure. I mean, they're not insane. Like, Gamma World is functionally 4th edition with the numbers filed off, you know? I think the coolest part of it is character creation, and then everything else is kind of like whatever. It's more or less standard D&D with a shiny coat of paint, but...
There are so many games where they save all of the cool shit for character creation and then leave nothing for the game itself. Like, did you ever play like 2nd edition Shadowrun?
No, never touched Shadowrun. Sorry, that's not true. I never touched Shadowrun on the tabletop. I played a couple of video games that were like, you know, those like isometric, like hard rules dependent RPG games, where it was like very much trying to recreate the tabletop experience. But I could not tell you which version of Shadowrun I was trying to run.
Okay, very much a rule of cool game, right?
Okay.
Like Shadowrun wants you to be the Matrix.
Yeah,
but like a dwarf as a hacker jacking into the net.
Right.
But all of their character creation stuff was so fucking dope. Because they had like these branching life paths that you could do where you started off completely normal and then you would end up with like scars or a missing arm or like new characters in your backstory that were going to come back to haunt you.
Okay.
And all of these were written down on your character sheet as part of the character creation process. And that was the first time that I had ever played with that.
Oh, interesting. So the thing that I like about Gamma World's character creation is that you roll 2d20 on a couple of tables for random mutations, and the random mutations determine your character skill set and progression.
I don't know why, but that just reminded me of Palladium's insanity tables.
Okay.
Where if something traumatic happens, you can just roll percentile dice, and then that's the insanity that you get.
Right.
And my first bit of weird tabletop RPG lore was that if you can find a first edition printing of the Palladium Fantasy RPG, one of the insanities that you can get is homosexuality.
I don't know if this is related, but there's a quasi-history podcast I listen to on a weekly basis that this week was talking about the old Victorian era mental deficiency classifications. What defines a moron versus a high functioning imbecile. Although it yeah. The
euphemism treadmill planders on. God damn. I kind of wish we could use that terminology today.
Yeah.
Only because it's hilarious.
Yeah, no, I want to combine those two tables into an RPG where as you take almost like a CTE simulator, as you take trauma from your encounters over time, you slowly degrade. Now you're a moron. Okay, now you're a high functioning imbecile. Okay, now you're an idiot, and now you're homosexual. It's just stacking brain damage.
I want us to start using some of that terminology to describe some of our clients at work.
Yeah, I want to bring back imbecile. That's for sure.
I specifically think there's something about high functioning imbecile that really tickles me.
Yeah. You are definitely severely damaged, but you can hold down a job.
Yeah, medium functioning moron. Yeah, I'm just going to put functioning labels on the beginning of all of my descriptions for our clients.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for making it all the way through this episode of No Plot Only Lore. If you're looking for more, you can always find us at noplotonlylore.com and on all the very best podcast platforms. If you like what you heard today, please share, rate, and review the show to feed my never-ending need for attention and validation.